award-winning Guardian journalist from Iraq. You've covered conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and beyond. Gaith, how do the Iraqi people remember Blackwater and Erik Prince, in your view?
I mean, it's amazing to kind of sit here and listen to Erik kind of speak about Blackwater and the services they did in Iraq, because the word Blackwater is synonymous with the worst of the American occupation of Iraq. There is not a single Iraqi that I know. I mean, I'm one of those barbarians that was liberated by your country. But there is not a single Iraqi who would, you just mentioned the word Blackwater to, who would not say corruption, violence. And I'm not talking only about the Nasur Square kind of massacre, but I'm talking about the whole 10 years of the existence of these mercenaries. And I think part of the failure of the American project in Iraq was due to the using of the contractors.
Isn't that a major problem, that you could concede that even if your plan is a good one, you shouldn't be the one doing it, given the legacy you've left behind with some people?
Here's the thing, your math is a little skewed, because the US didn't invade Iraq till 2003, and I sold the company in 2010, so that's certainly not 10 years. The company tracked,
7 years.
we tracked all the vehicles where everybody was moving, okay? And there was dozens and dozens of times that it was brought up, there was a Blackwater event here, Blackwater event there, and we didn't have people within 200 kilometers of that location. The sad thing is, Blackwater became like Kleenex. It became
Do you know why? Because you became this.
Because we were the largest one doing
because
that
you were
very
the
high-profile
worst.
mission.
That's the reason. I mean, you gave in Iraq now, or in Yemen, or any of these places, they don't use the word contractor or something. They use Blackwater. In Yemen, in wherever, in Somalia, they don't use mercenaries or contractors.
Gaith, you've been in Afghanistan recently
Yes.
as well, I believe, for your reporting. Do you think Afghans will welcome this plan that Erik is putting on the table?
I've met administration officials, high security officials of the current Afghan administration's opposition, and some of your own friends in Afghanistan, and all agree on one thing: it's not going to work. I agree with you totally that 17 years have been total waste. They followed copied the Soviet plan. This is something we agree on. However, you're not meeting government officials, you're not talking to the minister, you're talking to warlords.
You're mistaken. I meet with dozens of Afghan officials, both in and out of the government, from all over the country,
And
be they
warlords.
Tajik, Uzbek, Hazara, and Pashtun.
And the warlords, right?
All the people that are going to be voting in the Afghan elections.
So we're going to move on, because we've got one more on our panel who needs to come in. Colonel Tim Collins is here. Tim, you once commanded British troops during Iraq. You gave that famous speech that a lot of us remember. In 2004, you quit the army and founded New Century, a private military consulting company. How would you evaluate what happened on Blackwater's watch?
Well, it's a whole different thing. I think what we have to remember, and indeed I've discussed this many times with Erik, the US State Department, the US military asked for services. They encouraged, they were enthusiastic to a point of hysteria that Blackwater go and do these missions. When it went wrong, they ran a mile. And so you have to look at those people and say, at a point where there was chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff were visiting the facility and encouraging more and more of these services to be privatized and let out. And when things went wrong, they turned their back on it.
Are you saying that Erik Prince and Blackwater were scapegoated by the US government?
Well, I think that as a result of the rather expensive court case that you've been through, I think that was the conclusion in the end, is that the criticism I as a contractor would level is that Blackwater and the organization probably grew too fast. There was people who went initially who were of the highest Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, Task Force 160. Some of the people who are coming in at the end had nowhere near that, and it's a question of who's supervising that, because the people, when we look at them, who were in court and convicted, were not of that quality, were not of that hue. How did they get there?
How did they get there? Why were you hiring poor quality people towards the end of your period in Iraq?
Well, because there's literally not enough Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 or even SEALs for that matter to do that mission. You could go to Marine infantry or Army infantry. The one fair characterization that I will say is Blackwater did two types of missions. We worked for the State Department. They dictated you must drive a polished, waxed Suburban, okay, big SUV, armored, 11,000 pounds, lights and sirens, down the road, and when you drive the same route every day that the State Department tells you to, it's very easy for the enemy to set up an ambush.
You keep saying engagement ambushes. Just to be clear for the audience, one study found that Blackwater opened fire first in 84% of the shootings. It wasn't defensive.
Because
you
when
fired first.
Okay, but it's not just a matter of the enemy opening fire with a firearm to attack. They open fire with a trigger switch when they drive up to you and destroy you.
Okay.
I mean, literally.
But
you
there's
should
also
see
ambulance drivers, 9-year-old children,
You should see
doctors
the pictures,
on their way to work.
whether it's